Howdy, Ags. Welcome to Aggie Growth Hacks, the podcast sponsored by the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M. And we're dedicated to helping entrepreneurs improve their business, connect with other Aggie entrepreneurs, and support one another. I'm your host, Greg Martin, fighting Texas Aggie class of 2001.
And I'm your co-host, Chris Hunter, fighting Texas Aggie class of 1998.
Well, season 8 is in the books, Ags. Thank you so much for joining us for the entire season. You know, this season was obviously a little bit different. We kind of mixed in some new interviews with some old interviews. I mean, personally, I think it was pretty cool to be able to look back and to hear some of the episodes that we recorded 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago during the pandemic, and some of the challenges that obviously everybody remembers. And I think we all have a little bit of PTSD from that. But at the end of the day, it was pretty cool to see the line that was connecting all of the previous episodes to the new episodes that we had this season. Because being an entrepreneur, it hasn't gotten easier since 2020, since we launched this thing. But what has gotten better is that the community that we live in, and to be able to share our experiences and to talk through what it's like to be an entrepreneur and encourage one another, that's been really cool. And that's been honestly been probably the single best thing about this experiment that is Aggie Growth Hacks, is kind of walking through. Chris, what were we had some really cool guests, to include, kicking it off with 2 world-renowned authors, but what were some things that really stuck in your mind and you took away?
Well, I think that the biggest overarching theme, because, we've had in overarching themes in different seasons, right? And prior seasons have been core values, have been really a lot of what we've talked about, the Aggie entrepreneurs that we've interviewed. I think that the big one on this one, and maybe it's because it's on my mind a lot, but it has been, getting how to get the right people in the right seat in your organization. Yep. And, starting with Mike Michalowicz, I mean, as a book nerd, right? I mean, I've got like every single one of his books sitting back here on my bookshelf, just getting the opportunity to be able to talk with someone like Mike Michalowicz was pretty cool. And I was geeking out pretty much the whole time. But with his specifically, as we talked with him, the biggest one that really stuck out with me and that's going to stick with me for forever is when he said, you start slow and let it grow. Right. And he said that in relation to how you can take an employee and keep elevating that employee to where they not only understand their job, but can take on other roles inside of your organization. And I absolutely love that entire, philosophy of, teach someone one thing to do. Next day, give them something else and give them something bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger every day. I love that. And I definitely will take that with me.
100%. And then to kind of, couple with that and then to bounce into the conversation that we had with Ryan England, who is a marketing and an HR and an employee retention specialist. Mm-hmm. Employees are the lifeblood of our company. They're the biggest investment that we have as entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. And to be able to say, okay, if we're going to spend this much money, how do we make sure that we attract and retain the right ones? And really to be able to have that spin back and to talk about it's not about the bean bags, chairs, or the foosball tables or the snack bar. If you've got that, that's really cool. I'd love to come hang out some afternoon. But it's really about culture and building and defining the culture, and then really looking at when you're placing ads to find new teammates. Mm-hmm. Place ads that attract the right people and repel the others. Yeah. And really to be able to, that's something that maybe a really good entrepreneurs do that with client selection, but very rarely it just floored me when he kind of presented it that way. Very rarely do we think about doing that with the employees, the ones that we're with 24 hours a day. Yeah. When it comes to work. So what about some of the other, highlights or things, little nuggets that you got? I liked how
Gabe and Megan Bach, they talked about how when they bring on clients for life, right? They don't, they like to not think of it as more and more and more, but as how how am I going to keep you longer and longer? Right. And I want you back to come back. And I love that philosophy. I've had clients for, I mean, obviously as a marketing agency, we sometimes there's a revolving door, but I have a select few clients that have been with me for 20 years. I mean, so I love that philosophy is let's build such a relationship that you can't imagine doing business without us, kind of a thing. How about you?
Well, and for them to do that in the real estate industry that is so transactional.
Yeah.
I mean, that just elevates them and their brand so much. I think that's pretty cool. Speaking of branding, when we talked with Grace Freitag, and I love geeking out on branding, not so much marketing, but branding. And I think that one of the coolest things that she really brought home was every business, every person has a brand. And what are you doing every single day in every interaction, whether it's posted on social or not, to build that brand, to be brand aware, to be brand conscious, to be true to yourself? I mean, to be very authentic. Yeah. But again, it is, how do you consistently build, this is who I am, this is who I serve, this is the value that my perfect clients get from me.
Yeah.
And then to have that to be attracting clients, not only personally, for your business, but also personally. As a marketeer, I mean, I know that was one that you really dug in on and started to get a little bit more nerdy, in some of the talk than I did, but I really enjoyed that, and it was very refreshing.
Well, and speaking of that brand, going back to Ryan Englund, right, when he talked about, most people don't have an issue with hiring, right? Most people have a marketing issue, because you're not marketing your business enough. So that is that brand, right? Like what she was talking about and what Ryan was talking about is that if you build a brand that's so well liked, people are going to want to come and work for you. And so therefore it's a marketing issue. It's a marketing and branding issue, if you will. So absolutely. I think that she and I could probably geek out all day long on that stuff, So there were a lot of other things in this season that really stuck out to me. I mean, when Nick Romer was talking about how you don't need to really grow fast, I see it a lot in the marketing world where someone is really good at sales, but they don't really know how to fulfill. It happens a lot.
Yeah.
And so they will build and build and build and build very fast because they're really good at sales, but then they have a retention issue because those clients aren't getting what they should be getting. So they grow way, way too fast. I've also seen it on the flip side of things to where you don't grow fast enough because you're so deep in the weeds on making everything absolutely perfect. But the biggest thing on that is make sure that you control your growth as an entrepreneur as you are growing, because you don't want to suffer on the client experience side of things, I think, or the customer experience side of things. And that happens in all sorts of different verticals, not just in marketing, what I'm talking about, but, that happens everywhere.
Yeah. And then you've got to deal with reputation risk. And once your reputation is out there of being unreliable or cheap or uncommunicative or whatever is negative, then you got to work 300 times as much to overcome that. And so to have that, but that's so hard. I mean, as an entrepreneur, every single one of us is like, I've got goals. I want to grow. And even if you're not motivated by money, having more money is always better than having less money. All things being equal, I'd rather have more money than less.
Yeah.
But if you can't execute and it's not sustainable, then that's really tough. I think the last thing that I really had when I look back on this season, and we had a couple veteran entrepreneurs as we usually do, but Spencer Walker, just his story about having to go through like all the fundraising and getting rejected time after time after time. And that's granted, that's his world. I mean, that's just the type of business that he's in. It requires a lot of cash to invest and to get up and running. It's not like he can, create a widget and then sell it. And then, he's not like Damon John that can, flip hats out of the trunk of his car. So that's part of what he signed up for. But I don't care how gritty you are. I don't care how confident you are in your business. To get rejected time and time again takes a toll.
Yeah.
But to have the grit to be able to push through, to focus on what your objectives are, and then constantly rally your team, because he talked about having the people that worked with him and having to constantly push them and keep them motivated, keep them moving on. That's entrepreneurship. That's like entrepreneurship 101 that no one outside of this thing wants to talk about, but everybody inside of it knows you've got to have. And we see that in every single episode every person we talk to, but that was just like up front and center. Just, you gotta be full of grit, and you gotta have a stomach of steel.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of mental toughness on his side to do that day in and day out and get that constant, rejection. I mean, I know that it's hard for any entrepreneur, and we all get kicked in the butt, but getting back up and getting it day in and day out is tough. And that's super hard to do, and one of the things, honestly, that I took away from his interview was when he talked about how he filters out noise. Right. And we're not talking about actual noise. We're talking about people talking in the industry and so forth. And really his biggest thing was just knowing who he can trust, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing who that he's listening to actually knows where he wants to go. Right. And that's another thing that I've noticed throughout all of this, because it wasn't just him. It was, and I don't remember now who, Gabe, right? Gabe and Megan Bach. They hired a coach, right? And that was the big trajectory change when they hired a coach to help them get to that next level. And I've had that happen in my own company, and I've seen that time and time again with all sorts of other people where they hire a coach and then all of a sudden they're on an upward trajectory, right? And I think that's another big takeaway of this entire season is that you got to know who to trust, right? How to filter out all of that noise that is in the industry.
Right. And what was when we were talking, when we were preparing for this, there's one more quote that I want you to read. Lauren Coates. And she was talking about, So go ahead.
Yeah. So what she said was, what the competition doing is interesting, but what I'm doing is fascinating.
Yes.
Right. So, and she was talking in that on, as entrepreneurs, it's easy for us to start looking at the competition to really see what they're doing, right? And really to focus on that too much. But one of my business coach says, what you focus on expands, okay? And so if you're focused on the competition, you're not focusing on what you're good at. You're not focusing on what you're best at and how you serve your own customers and clients. So I loved her quote, right? But what I'm doing is fascinating. So that was pretty awesome.
So Ags, we hope that you loved season 8 as much as we loved putting it on for y'all. Thank you for joining us for this entire season. Thank you for joining us for 8 amazing seasons of Aggie Growth Hacks. That's going to wrap it up for this episode and for this season. We hope that if you're not connected with us, come on, y'all, connect with me, connect with Chris, connect with Aggie Growth Hacks on whatever social you're on. Make sure that you give this episode a big gig'em thumbs up, and make sure you subscribe, you leave a comment, so that we can have this get out to more ags and we can connect one another, we can lift each other up, and we can support one another.
We want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M University. Since 1999, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship has served as the hub of entrepreneurship for Texas A&M. If you're an Aggie entrepreneur or even a entrepreneur, head on over to their website right now to find a program that's right for you. Just go to aggiegrowthhacks.com/McFerrin right now. Well, Ags, join us next season when we connect with a lot of other great Aggie entrepreneurs and how they learn how they hack their growth. Till then, I'm Chris Hunter.
And I'm Greg Martin. Thanks and gig 'em.